Well, here we are, bringing this chapter to a close. Thank you very much, Darren, for providing a pretty enlightening course when it comes to critical analysis of social, global, and cultural issues. Um, Certainly thought about a number of things that completely passed by my radar in terms of understanding diversity, equity, and inclusion. Um, Before I kind of get into my synopsis, I guess, if you will, of our course, I do want to address a couple questions that you had posed as through Brightspace. I don't really know how to do that. Do I send you an email to follow up? But, anyways, so you had stated that you might suggest that we provide either audio or video responses rather than written text. And I think, certainly in this program, especially, and perhaps even in the other educators that might come into your teaching realm, if you will, or potential educators. But I think for a lot of us, going through the courses that we're going through feels as though we're being put through the ranks of PhD status, if you will, that some of us may be pursuing, but a lot of us that are either teaching tech like myself or small children in, becoming a primary teacher, I find it interesting the level of writing and reading that comes into the mix. So, for sure, I would say audio and video works really well. I think you get to kind of see people's personality, and it's always great to be able to do live Zooms and kind of speak on the fly the way you would in a lecture hall. I really enjoy classes like that. This has been challenging for myself because I don't typically indulge in the amount of reading I've been doing. And that being said, I realized that I did not post for Module 6, and to be honest, I found Module 6 a little bit challenging with the reading, again, not being one that's a massive reader. The other modules, however, the link or the resource is established, I have the ability to highlight parts of text, which is incredibly helpful. But with Module 6, when that window popped open, it was a different system or format, or it kind of just popped up like my screen, and I wasn't able to highlight and keep something highlighted. So that posed big challenges for me, and I think those hurdles, along with the fact that I have a lot going on with my grandma, I just kind of said I'm going to sacrifice some marks here, but I will touch base on Module 6 in my little collective thing here. And without rambling too much, my apologies. In terms of videos, yes, you can, in fact, create a video directly through Brightspace or an audio clip. However, I've done it in the past, and when you do it directly through Brightspace, if your computer shuts down, or you know how a screensaver almost comes on, if for whatever reason your internet shimmies, and I've been caught on campus before trying to upload something and I got into spotty service and the video's just gone. So for myself, sometimes these videos, they're 10 minutes or more. And my apologies, I will try to be pretty direct and brief with the remainder, but I will say that it can be really frustrating. So I just opted to do my video on something that stores to my computer first, and that way there's no issues in the upload, because if you have any glitches, that video just disappears, or audio clip. So word to the wise, if your students if you enjoy these types of responses, encourage your students to do it another way. And it was, I think, Oliver and Tim combination that suggested uploading to YouTube, so the link can just be clicked. No downloading required. The link just clicks through the post there. So Anyways, I think the biggest way that I will approach teaching in moving forward, I've always tried to be someone that's really non-judgmental and comes from a place of love, and I realize that all people are cut from the same cloth. We just have uniqueness about all of us, and we should celebrate that uniqueness. But in another one of our courses that's more on like social, or sorry, like social, emotional, and behavioral disabilities and challenges, we need to treat individuals with unconditional positive regard. At the end of the day, all living things require appreciation, some form of like satisfaction. So to nurture that and acknowledge that, and just know that having that positive regard with zero restrictions or limitations, I think we would really nurture a positive world moving forward, really. And something that was brought up in the video, the lovely individual, forgive me, I did not write down her name, but in terms of breaking students down and teaching as bowling, and your students are the pins and the bowling ball is the lesson, and you're gonna have, if you go straight down the center and only aim for the majority of students, at the end of the day, you're gonna leave out the ones that require more support and the ones that need to be challenged. Excuse me. And it's interesting that we have kids, or individuals rather, on complete opposite ends of the spectrum, and in another one of your comments that you stated, I believe when it came to schools as social sorting machines, individuals that, like the fact that we group kids together by their age, and is that really advisable? I don't know if it's necessarily beneficial, because there are many individuals that, potentially have a learning disability, let's say, and that learning disability causes them to interact at maybe a different aged mindset, if you will. For example, a really good friend of mine, her stepdaughter is autistic, and she is going to be turning 12 this year, and she gets along beautifully with my son, who is 7, because they're essentially mentally about the same place. And so, I think that it would wildly benefit this individual if she was put in a class that was closer to her mentality, because sometimes kids can be really mean, and they're not entirely kind to her because she's different, but it's because she has that younger mindset. So yeah, I don't necessarily agree that kids or individuals should be grouped by age. I don't have a massive amount of knowledge when it comes to Montessori schools, but I have been told that one of their practices is that children are grouped in classrooms of 4 years of age. So essentially, let's say 4, 5, 6, and 7 years old are all in one classroom. And what happens is when you're 4, you're the young one, but you also have someone that's 5, 6, and 7 that you look up to. And so the 5-year-olds are a little bit of a mentor to the 4s, but they also have people above them, if you will, whether it comes to wisdom, knowledge, ability, skill. But they have almost these like internal mentors. And then you kind of go up the ranks, and you end up at some point being that 7-year-old that's now, for lack of better terms, like a mother hen that encourages growth and sharing knowledge and wisdom as skills and abilities with the individuals younger than them. So I really firmly believe that that's a beautiful practice, because then what happens when that child, now at the top of the totem pole, let's say, becomes 8 years old, they're now on the next totem pole. So now you're back to being the fresh, I don't want to, you're the new kid on the block, right? So you're the new kid on the block, and now there's these older mentors now again above you, and you'll kind of climb through that rank. So it also, in a sense, puts a little bit of humility into these kids, and humanism, if you will, to really understand that you might at some point become top dog, but that's not permanent. And I think individuals need to realize that nothing in this life or this world is truly permanent, and I truly wish that they would realize that their labels are a bunch of baloney that's made up by a bunch of egos. And in my classroom, I work really hard to impart respect to be paramount. I let the kids know that I expect them, the number one rule is respect. I expect them to not only respect myself, but their peers, the classroom, the tools within our classroom, and absolutely I want them to respect themselves. And we really, really stress that. And I work a lot on team building within my class, and I love pairing off unlikely friendships, if you will, or relationships, because it really gives them a sense of being human, if you will. So I love the idea of just going into class with that unconditional positive regard. And that something you had posted in one of our modules is essentially that learning is from, with, and about others. And I try to stress that in my classroom as well, that we need to take the time to learn from others. We need to take the time to learn with others, and we need to take the time to learn about others. And I think so far this semester especially, I've been doing a pretty good job of that in my classroom. And it was really cool to do a UDL lesson plan that was relative, like right as I was going through my practicum. I was like, let's give this as much representation as we can. And the kids loved it. And when we did a debrief after, nobody said that they didn't. I said, what did you maybe like? What did you maybe not like? What did you learn that you didn't know before? And what would you change if you could change something? And the only thing that came out about what they would change is that they would have maybe chosen a different form to present, but they realize that they're kind of stuck within their box, and they haven't been given the opportunity to kind of push boundaries or showcase their learning in different formats than what they've been told their entire lives to do. So it was really cool. Really, really, really cool. It happened like right at an awesome time. So very, very cool. In turn, like, if I kind of skim through the modules that we went through, when it comes to France, I think it's amazing that they have a strong focus on relational skills rather than like physical competencies, and that their secondary education starts at age 11 and it's in 2 phases. And I think that at a time when individuals are maturing quite a bit, it's really important, not that's necessarily important, but we go back to the module where I had these kids that were super checked out during the lesson, and those are the individuals at like 11 years old probably should have gotten into something hands-on. Let's make something, let's build something, let's do something, let's get you away from textbooks, because that's clearly not how you learn. So I think it's fabulous that they break it down from 11 to 15 and then 15 to 18. And then speaking to vocational training in Canada, I think it's unnecessary that we put emphasis on academic paths. And in essence, we're creating a void in our labor workforce, and we end up filling it up with a bunch of immigrants. And a good portion of those immigrants have mass amounts of training in other professions, and they don't get to utilize their credentials because for some reason they don't transfer over. So I think our government needs to do a better job, not only in making sure that when a person is certified, that we have some degree of, whether it's, let's say, hairstylist, because I understand the licensing process, why couldn't you just have someone jump right into, okay, if you want to write our exam or do our practical test, you pass, you get your license. Or, there should be some form of, like, sorry, slight distraction. There should be some form of, I don't know, like bar as to what you need to acknowledge or showcase your knowledge to say, oh yeah, this person understands this industry. Here you go. Continue on, being a doctor or pharmacy technician or bank teller even, or, engineer, right? So I don't think that it's necessary. I don't think that it's fair. And I don't think that it's fair that we put so much stress on academic avenues, because it ties into the whole schools are sorting machines, which from Module 4. At the end of the day, when you come from a certain background, and it's a background that unfortunately is not a privileged one, your chances of going through to post-secondary even are very slim because it's expensive. And even myself, I come from immigrant family, and there's never been any extra money. We've kept a roof over our heads, we've had food in our fridge, and but we definitely know what tight times are. And so there wasn't this little nest to go to post-secondary. And if I didn't have to concern myself about that, and for myself, taking out OSAP as a young individual was absolutely not an option, because I was working so young and needed to provide for my family, help out. And so it's really interesting because there's plenty of people out there that their school is paid for, their living accommodations, their parents, help take care of them as they go through their university path. They have someone that they can look to and say, help me with this paper. Myself, I probably would have gone to law school. I can be pretty argumentative at times, love a good debate, love to highlight my point, if you will, clearly. And so, schools as sorting machines, inequalities are unintentional, or they're just ignorantly intentional or unintentional. Because I never even saw schools as sorting machines before this, but it's really shed some light that depending on where you live, your school's maybe not the greatest school, because the teachers also prefer to work in nicer neighborhoods with mild-tempered children and, all that kind of stuff. And then when it comes to streams, I feel like streams are harmful because someone in a lower stream, there's no way that they can bust their hiney to get up into an academic stream if they want to change their circumstance, And we think it's helping education as a whole, but I think UDL could bridge the gap, because better teachers tend to work at schools in nicer neighborhoods, as I stated earlier. UDL is a great way to not be so concerned with the stream, and I think I really see that as a tech teacher, because I have individuals that are highly academic. I have individuals that have IEPs. I have like K-code, like certificate only, not a diploma individuals in my class, and I have a lot of ESL students in my class. So there's a wide range, and I get to see UDL in action, and it's brilliant to, you know, because it can challenge that person that has the capacity to be challenged. And you can also have someone that's like the K Code individual that did an expressive dance to showcase her knowledge and, you know, do the writing component on the side and put together her Bristol board. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And yeah, I really hope that UDL becomes a huge point in like professional development days. I really, really do, because I don't know how long it's been researched, and I guess note to Nikki, look into how long UDL has been a thing, because I'm curious to see how long it will take for it to be widely applied by teachers across the country, really. But to really see it applied in the classroom on the regular through different avenues of courses, I think would be phenomenal. So I don't believe it's going anywhere, but looking forward to seeing the expansion of that. And how does the education system perpetuate social inequality? You know, I wrote the different social sorting organizations, constitutional rights, criminal law, labor legislation, taxes, and schools, which, children of privileged households have every chance and opportunity to become successful. Where many coming from lower income families have an added stress of financials, which may be large enough to deter in the first grade. And something I think that really, really should come into play, I mean, our school did a Great Start breakfast for honor roll students. So if you had an 80 or above, you went for a free breakfast that the school provided, and you got to bring a parent as well. And I think it's a bunch of baloney, because we had an individual challenge her grade after the end of the semester. We're in semester 2. This breakfast initiative gets announced, and then we have a student come back at us angry that she had a 78, which she fully deserved, but because her mother works in the school, the principal requested that we change the mark. So not that we just change the mark, give her the opportunity to submit work that she didn't submit. She had been reminded that she had 5 zeros, but anyways, rather than celebrate high marks, which are very relative, as I stated in one of my modules previously, like, do you even retain it? You have great grades, but how much of it do you really keep logged up here? And rather than celebrate the grades, can we celebrate attendance? I praise. We have period 3. They are amazing. They show up. We have perfect attendance all the time, and that is very rare when we're dealing with high school individuals. We need to be praising those kinds of good habits. The grades are only worth so much, right? Anyways, learning module 6, the one that I forgot to upload in terms of gender inequalities. Stacy had put it perfectly in her blog when I was reading through everyone's blogs, you know. Gender segregation stems from societal stereotypes, cultural norms, and historical biases about gender roles and abilities. Nailed it, you know. And it's interesting that men are largely paid higher than females in many avenues, and men tend to dominate a majority of the trades. I can even say that in the hairstyling world, which is female dominated, as I did sales for quite some time and I went to visit all the salons in the area, and I can tell you that male hairstylists that did both women and men, not just barbers. Barbers focus on cutting hair, right? Typically men's hair. But male stylists that cater to men and women generally make significantly more money than really good female hairstylists. For some reason, it's just easier, or perhaps the client just believes even more so that they have a great head of hair once they leave the salon. I don't know what it is, but men have a lot easier of a time establishing themselves as a stylist, and also in the amount of money they make. I know that because I worked in that industry and I went to all the salons, and I could tell you women have to work harder to make the same amount of money as those male stylists that take female clients. It's interesting, right? I know many male stylists that actually have their wife as their assistant. And it's interesting, if it was the other way around, where the female was the stylist and the man was the assistant, would it still have the same effect? But we're talking very, very, very busy stylists that are very well to do. Yeah, so it's interesting. It's also interesting, I worked for a crane company for a little while, and female crane operators are very few and far between, but I promise you that any owner of a crane company would prefer to have a female operator, because they say that women have more foresight, and we look ahead a little bit more. So, it's interesting that something that would be considered wildly male dominated. I mean, in a crew of 13 crane operators, we would occasionally get a woman in from the Sarnia area to cover. So, interesting, very interesting. Learning Module 7, Disability Inequalities. It's interesting, I went back and I looked at my video, and even in my video I questioned those individuals, how they chose a school that's less accessible, and I kind of shook my head at myself, and I was just like, well, Nikki, different schools specialize in different fields, and maybe it's the only school in Western Canada that provides a really good photography program, or maybe they're specializing in geographical photography, and why would you do that in the prairies, or so kind of shame on me, but I can call myself out on my faults, and I do take the time to reflect. So I know that's gonna help in being a teacher down the road for sure. And these children need to be treated, when it comes to kids in our classroom, that they need to be treated just as the able-bodied are. Again, unconditional positive regard, and no more than I would judge someone for having brown hair or dark blonde hair. I'm not going to judge somebody for their physical capabilities or their physical disabilities, or whether it's their learning abilities or their learning disabilities. It's not my place to judge who they are as a learner. It's my place to understand where they're coming from, their degree and level of perception and capacity to learn, and to meet them where they're at. Classroom accommodations that I like to do in my room is write an agenda on the board, typically like a daily breakdown of what we're going to cover. If it's something larger scale, like when we did the project, I wrote down by day what we need to focus on and what we'll be kind of doing individually days. Physical accommodations, I would love to see a classroom that has the capacity to accommodate someone that might use a chair. I did think about how, in the long run, to become a stylist, if you had physical limitations, if you were like wheelchair bound, um, I don't know how well that would work. And um, not to discredit someone in a chair because they do marvelous things, but I just know how hard it can be on the body when you're constantly contorted and twisted off center, that I would worry that someone in a wheelchair, because you would need to get your hands right into your client's chair because they're sitting, um, you would always be twisted, and I feel like that would put a lot of stress on the spine. So what I came to realize is if I had an individual that was really, really passionate about hairstyling, I would encourage them to become a wig specialist, because that you could actually put on a mannequin stand on a tabletop that you can wheel yourself under. And I think that there's a need for individuals that make custom hair pieces. There absolutely is. So that's something that I thought could make sure that doesn't have kids feeling defeated if they're ever in that situation. And I speak loudly in class, and I do use a lot of visuals. And thank you to you, Darren, because I did not know of the website AODA, and I did briefly look at it before I got into this module, and I think it's a really cool resource, and it's been bookmarked into my browser because I'm old school and I just like bookmarks as much as Flipgrid was kind of a fun assignment. There's so many medias and technology, and it's kind of time consuming. Not to say that it's not worth it. I much prefer to talk with colleagues and get resources and save them in the avenues that are easy at my fingertips. I might play with the curation tool a bit more when I have a bit of time. Once these classes wrap up, I think we have a little bit of downtime before June, so I'll try to give it a little bit more love. It's a lot. Working, schooling, momming, taking care of my grandma, and then universitying. Learning Module 8, I'm going to wrap up because I know this is a really long video and I'm really sorry, but it's also our final task. And UDL, love that it started with architecture. I love trying to touch base with Gardner's multiple intelligences, and I know you know what they are, so I'm not going to list them. But I think awareness is key, and having students exposed to multiple intelligences. I think some of the things that we've learned, they're new to me, and I wish I would have known some of these things when I was younger versus just finding them out in my 30s. So a visual just from Google of the wheel of Gardner's 8 multiple intelligences, and to have that in the classroom. And I do want to implement in my class a bit of an individual get to know me, kind of about me page is something I did, but I want to do a little bit. I want to revise it for the next time I run it. But I want that wheel, and I want individuals to list, at least one, but potentially up to 3. Like, if you could pick what you gravitate towards, is it visual, spatial? Is it naturalistic? Is it interpersonal? Like, I want to know who you are as a person and your best learning abilities. And because I think they don't even realize that one of those is going to be really powerful for them in their journey. So that's all I've got. Darren, again, thank you so much. As a mom of a 7-year-old as of tomorrow and a grandmother that I take care of, the amount of reading can be exhausting. But it's not for nothing. It's really enlightening, and I know you genuinely care about your students, and it shows. And I appreciate that this asynchronous course was a bit more streamlined than the last. So thank you very much. And you have the most fabulous spring break, if you will. Enjoy the good weather on the horizon. Thanks again.